In one big city, two poor children lived in the neighborhood, Kai and Gerda, who loved each other like brother and sister. Parents allowed them to walk to each other on the roof to visit and sit on a bench under the roses. In the warm season, they spent all their time here, inventing different games, and in the winter they loved to sit by the warm hearth and listen to amazing stories that their grandmother often told them. Once, when the children were looking at a picture book, Kai felt something prick him in the eye and heart. These were the fragments of the mirror of the powerful lady, the Snow Queen. Since then, the boy's behavior has changed dramatically. He became angry, rude, and cruel. One day, Kai went tobogganing and never returned. When Gerda found out about Kai's disappearance, she cried for a long time. But she was sure that Kai was alive, so she decided to go in search of him. For a long time, Gerda walked through the forests, through the fields, and then she came across a wonderful house, buried in flowers. The hostess came out to her. It was an old sorceress in a large straw hat. The old woman really liked Gerda, and therefore she bewitched the poor girl and left her with her forever. Gerda forgot about the purpose of her journey and spent a lot of time playing in the wonderful garden of the hospitable hostess. Once she accidentally saw a rose and remembered Kai, and immediately waking up from the magic, went on the road. On the way, Gerda met a big smart raven. He told the girl that he knew a princess who was about to get married, and her fiancé looked very much like Kai. The raven agreed to take Gerda to him. Once in the palace, Gerda managed to see the future prince. Unfortunately, it was not Kai. The princess, having heard the sad story of the girl, presented her with a golden carriage with a coachman and servants, as well as shoes, a muff, and a wonderful dress. And Gerda hit the road. In the dark forest, the sparkling carriage immediately caught the eye of the robbers, who immediately attacked it. The robber took Gerda prisoner. She took Gerda to the robber's castle to show off her menagerie, which contained forest pigeons and reindeer from Lapland. Hearing the story of her captive, the robber took pity on her and released her along with the reindeer in search of Kai. The reindeer brought the girl to the old Lapland woman, who warmed and fed the exhausted girl. She wrote a few words on a dried cod to her friend Finn, who lived near the Snow Queen's palace, asking to help the girl. She explained to Gerda that the reason for Kai's bad behavior was the fragments of the mirror that hit his heart and eyes, and he would never be the same if the ice was not melted by the power of a warm, loving heart. Gerda went to the palace of the Snow Queen alone. No one dared approach the house of the powerful mistress. She was very cold and scared. Finding herself in the castle, Gerda was surprised how cold, deserted, and dead he was. Soon she noticed Kai, who turned completely blue, almost blackened from the cold. The boy sat in a corner and tried to lay out the word eternity from the ice floes, because in this case he would have received the whole world and a pair of new skates as a gift from the Snow Queen. Gerda rushed to Kai, hugged him tightly and cried. With her hot tears, she melted the splinter stuck in the boy's heart. Having picked up, Kai also began to cry, and the second shard flowed out of his eyes along with tears. How happy they were to see each other! But there was no time for joy. They had to get out of the ice palace before the Snow Queen returned. When Kai and Gerda finally got out of the kingdom of the Snow Queen, they hurried home. On the way back, they met all the friends who helped Gerda in her search. At home, their favorite blooming roses were waiting for them, and everything that happened was soon forgotten by them, like a heavy dream.
On Christmas Eve, Fritz and Mary were looking forward to unpacking their presents. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. It was their uncle with a bunch of gifts in his hands. The children were very happy to see him. Then they began to unpack the presents. Mary got fancy dolls, toy dishes, and a beautiful silk dress. Fritz also got what he wanted, a magnificent horse and a mouse king. Mary noticed that there was a soldier under the tree. It was the Nutcracker, designed to neatly crunch hard nuts. The girl really liked it. But Fritz said it was his gift and tried to take it from his sister. The children stretched the Nutcracker so far that they tore his arm off. The broken toy became unnecessary for the boy. Mary was very upset and burst into tears. But my uncle was able to repair the soldier. The girl was happy and hugged him gently. The day was very busy, so she soon got tired and fell asleep right under the tree. During her sleep, Mary heard strange sounds. They were like mouse fuss. The girl opened her eyes. The objects in the house seemed much larger than they were. And the tree under which she fell asleep became absolutely gigantic. Mary realized that it was not the objects that had increased, but that she had decreased. Suddenly, the Mouse King with his army appeared before the eyes of the astonished girl. Mary was very frightened and wanted to run away. But the giant mice stopped her. And then a miracle happened. The Nutcracker jumped to his feet and grabbed the girl. They instantly climbed the tree to the bookshelf, and along it got to Fritz's toys. There was a whole collection of tin soldiers. The Nutcracker called for help. The soldiers immediately jumped to their feet and ran after him. The Nutcracker took command of the army, and the soldiers began to fight the army of the Mouse King. The battle between toys and mice was fierce. But, unfortunately, there were too many mice, and the Nutcracker army began to suffer defeat. Mary saw this and ran out of her hiding place. She threw her shoe at the Mouse King and hit him right in the head, and he fell to the floor unconscious. The rest of the mice realized that the battle was lost and ran away in all directions. Mary ran to the Nutcracker, but he lay unconscious, as he was badly wounded by the Mouse King. The girl thought that he was dead and began to cry bitterly. And suddenly, a beautiful fairy appeared behind Mary. She decided to help the girl. With a wave of her wand, she revived the Nutcracker. With a second wave of her wand, the fairy turned the soldier into a handsome prince. Mary and Nutcracker looked at each other with loving eyes and could not take their eyes off. With a wave of her wand for the third time, the fairy took the couple in love to the kingdom of sweets. The trees there were made of candy, and the flowers were made of marmalade. It was a wonderful place. Mary closed her eyes for a second in pleasure. And suddenly, she heard the voice of her mother, who called her by name. Opening her eyes, the girl saw her mother, who looked at her in confusion. Mary also could not understand what was happening. The girl told about her wonderful journey, but her mother only smiled sweetly. Then Mary saw the pewter Nutcracker in her arms. And then she realized that she had slept under the tree all night, and everything that happened to her was just a vivid dream. A few years later, the nephew of their godfather came to visit Mary and Fritz. As soon as he entered the house, the girl almost fell to the floor in surprise. The boy looked like the Nutcracker as 2 drops of water. He also liked Mary at first sight. After some time, they got married, and lived no worse than in the magic kingdom of sweets.